Oh, Sukkot, right? We've reached Sukkot. Sukkot.
Do you put the schach on the sukkah before Yom Kippur, or you gotta wait till after Yom Kippur?
Nah, you can put it up before if you want.
Anytime.
But it does say that on Motzei Yom Kippur it's a mitzvah to build the sukkah. So
A lot of people already.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's only a limited amount of time, so
Yeah, but
whatever.
This year is a long gap.
What between long?
Sunday till Friday.
No,
Sunday
till Wednesday night. Long is relative,
I keep on thinking of Yom Kippur like.
What I do is normally I put up the sukkah before Yom Kippur, and then on Motzei Yom Kippur we put the schach on. But really, you should. Everyone's got to work this out according to their schedule because it ain't simple.
Do you sleep on the sukkah?
Sure.
You do?
Yeah. It's great. You're kidding? Yerushalayim is beautiful. In England, sukkahs, the weather's normally abysmal. I remember when I was growing up, sukkahs was either sweltering hot, with wasps and bees flying around in the sukkah, being attracted by the honey, or it was freezing cold and pouring with rain. But I don't think there was ever anything in between. It was either that or that. And I remember years where we would go out to the sukkah and we would make kiddush, and then we'd go back inside because it was impossible to stay there. Okay, Sukkot. Let's have a look at Sukkot. First of all, let's talk about the sukkah itself. You'll probably see sukkahs sprouting up all over the place over here, on the porches, and here I can see one through the window over here actually that somebody's built out there on the passageway going up. What is a sukkah? Well, I mean, a sukkah is like a temporary dwelling place. Right? The whole idea of Sukkot is that we go out for 7 days and we live in these things, and we're supposed to do everything there. So we eat and we drink and we learn and we sleep, and everything's supposed to be happening in the sukkah. And it's a sense. What we're trying to do is that we're trying to understand the sense of how everything in this world, in the physical world, is temporary and very much ethereal, and we're trying to get ourselves protected by God, not to rely on the physicality in the world. That's one of the reasons why sukkahs are normally pretty flimsy structures. Some are, some aren't. You may come across some sukkahs that are like pretty impressive, but in general, people. I don't know. My brother's got a sukkah built into his house. He doesn't have to build it. He just has to remove. He's got like some kind of a plastic bubble thing that sits during the rest of the year, sits on top of an opening in the roof. And on sukkahs, he just has to open it up, which I think is a swizz, because sukkahs is all about schlepping wooden things around and getting splinters. If you don't get any splinters before sukkahs, something's wrong. You haven't fulfilled the mitzvah in its entirety if you don't have a handful of splinters. And he's just got to pull a couple of strings and the thing pops open. It's quite neat, actually. So you'll come across some very impressive structures, but the idea, the philosophy behind the sukkah is that we're putting ourselves into the hands of God, and we're saying, here, you look after us, and we recognize that God is looking after us, and then because of that, we now understand when we go back into our homes that even when we've got a home and we've got a proper roof on top of our heads, even then God is looking after us then as well. So let's have a look and see how do you build a sukkah? What do you need for a sukkah? You need a minimum of 2.5 walls, right? So in order to be able to build a sukkah, you need to have a minimum of 2.5 walls, and it's got to be built in a way that you can put the schach on the top. We'll talk about the schach in a moment. What can the walls be made out of? Well, you can really make them out of anything. There is a slight problem. There are some pretty nifty clipped together sukkot that you can buy. They come with metal bars, and they clip together, and it takes all of a couple of minutes to put the thing together. It's really very uncomplicated. And then you have a material that goes around the sides, and you've just made your sukkah. The only problem with a sukkah like that is that the sides, according to the halakha, the sides have to be something which don't move around when there's wind. They've got to be made out of something that's got, again, we're talking halachically. In a minute you'll see why I'm stressing that, because according to Jewish law, we're going to work out a way where you can have these sukkot that have the material going around, and how to make it okay, how to make it kosher. If you just put up the sukkah with the frame and the material, then it's not going to be okay. You need to have, going around from the bottom, coming up a certain height, you need to have a series of either something, either metal bars or some kind of a rope that goes around very tightly, so it doesn't move, and that's going to be the equivalent of a halachic wall, and that's going to be okay. And then you can put the material around it. That's not a problem. The material can blow around in the wind. That's not a problem either. But you've got to have this situation where you've now created a wall according to Jewish law, and that's going to make your sukkah okay to sit in, right? And then you've got to put on the schach on the top. What is the schach made out of? The schach has to be made out of stuff that grows, right? Something which is natural. It's got to be. It cannot be attached to the ground. So if you've got a tree growing in your garden, and you decide that you want to put up your sukkah underneath the tree, thinking to yourself that the branches of the tree are going to serve as the schach, as the cover, that's not good enough. That's not going to count, and you're not able to fulfill the mitzvah. You've got to put something that's got to be detached, and it's got to be put on. Now, when I was growing up, many years ago, when I was growing up, so the schach that was used was normally branches that were cut down from trees. Again, in England, we didn't have any palm trees, so it was all kinds of different trees, all kinds of different branches and leaves, and it was it was very pretty. Here in Israel, the prevalent leafage that is used comes from palm trees, because there are lots of those around, and you'll see people selling piles of these things each year. Sometimes the Iriyah, the municipality, actually has locations where you can go and pick them up for free, because it's good for everybody, these things, because the municipality likes to trim the trees, get them ready for the winter, and so they trim off all the foliage, and then people come pick up the foliage for free, and they can put it on their sukkah, and that way everybody's benefiting. The municipality benefits, and the people benefit as well. What a lot of people have are reusable schach mats, right? They're normally made out of bamboo, and they're strung together with special string, and they roll up. They're very, very functionable. Once you're finished with them, you can roll them up and put them away. They don't take up too much space, and a lot of people use those things as well. Now, what you have to be careful for when you're putting a schach on, if you're going to use a mat, for example, it can get pretty windy over here in Jerusalem. I don't know where you people come from, perhaps it gets windy too. You cannot tie the schach down with just anything. You have to be careful what kind of material you use. Again, it's got to be natural material. You can't use string. You shouldn't use those. What are those plastic? What are they called? Those. You know what I mean? Those plastic things that you pull them tight.
Bungee cord?
Huh?
Bungee cord?
Oh, zip ties?
Zip ties, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Zip ties. That long things, and you thread them through at one end and you pull them.
It's a lot of holes.
Yeah.
It links up.
Yeah.
It's linking tighter
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Zip ties, okay. So you can't use zip ties, and you shouldn't be using any kind of metal cord, whatever it is. It's got to be something which is natural. You can actually take a lulav, right? Not a kosher lulav. You can take a lulav which can't be used for the mitzvah, and you can strip off the leaves one by one, and you can thread them through and tie them on. That's okay. That's fine. And you got to make sure, because what's the problem? If the schach is flying around and it opens up a big hole inside of the sukkah, then the sukkah becomes can't be used, right? It's not kosher anymore, which is a little bit of a problem, right? Seeing as how it's Sukkot. So if it's not on Yom Tov, if it's during the intermediate days, then you can put it back on and you can tie it back down. But if it's on Yom Tov, it's a little bit of a problem. So you've got to be careful with what you're doing. You've got to be careful how you build your sukkah. But you can make a beautiful sukkah and you can decorate it. And we eat all our meals over there. You're not supposed to eat anything outside of the sukkah, right? Some people are very careful not to eat anything at all outside of the sukkah, but for sure you're not supposed to eat anything outside of the sukkah that requires either to wash your hands like hamotzi, to eat bread, or what's called mizanot. Right? What is mizanot? So we're talking about cakes, we're talking about crackers, we're talking about pasta, we're talking about couscous, we're talking about all kinds of things like that.
What about chicken and...
So the image is like this. It's true that chicken, you make a shahakal over, right? But I think that meat should be eaten inside of the sukkah because meat normally signifies a more serious meal, right? Even though today I think we've lost sight of, whether meals are serious or not. You could buy yourself a sandwich on the run that's stuffed full of meat. But in the olden days, if you ate meat, that was considered to be a suda. And the truth is, in the olden days, when people ate meat, they would never eat meat by itself. They would always wash, and they would make a proper meal out of it. And that's something that should be done inside of the sukkah, for sure. But let's say, for example, you want to drink some hot chili sauce, for example, as a conversation starter. I don't know, right?
He loves when you talk about this.
I see that. I saw the way his face lit up over there. Look at that smile. It's like, look at that. It's like, it's great. It works. I'm telling you, this stuff works. So what's going to be going on at Sukkot? It's all going to be a lot of fun. We've got, again, prayers, lots of synagogue. I'm sorry to break it to you quite like that, but there's lots of prayers going on. However, on the first night of Sukkot, which is on Wednesday night, so you'll go off to wherever you're eating your meals, and you'll eat the meal in the sukkah. And there's a special blessing which is recited when you eat food in the sukkah. It's called Leishev Basukkah. Every time you're going to eat any food, any significant food inside of the sukkah, you're supposed to make that bracha Leishev Basukkah. It's a very beautiful bracha to be able to make. It's an opportunity. And again, you'll eat your meal over there. Like I said before, most people over here in Israel sleep in their sukkahs as well, which means at some point, everything gets cleared out and mattresses get brought in, and you sleep out there. And it's the kind of thing that sleeping outside, I don't know if you people sleep out in the open very often, but for most people that are living sort of regular urban lives don't sleep out very often. So it probably takes about a week to get used to sleeping outside, and then you have to move back in and get used to spend another week getting used to sleeping back inside again. I know that in my sukkah at home, one of the things that wakes me up far too early are the birds on the schach, their claws. Right, you hear them like shuffling around over there. I don't know what maybe they're dancing. I don't know what they're doing exactly, but it certainly makes a lot of noise. That's for sure. So that's the first night. There'll be lots of good food. There'll be another special bracha which is going to be recited, another special blessing which is the Shechianu blessing, the blessing that we make whenever we get to a new Yom Tov. So we make that new festival, we make that special blessing.
The Shechianu, the Kiddush, you make it the first night.
Yeah.
You make it, and how about the second night?
I tell you the truth, I do not remember because it's been. I mean, you're only keeping one night, aren't you? You're only keeping one day. Yeah. I don't remember what happens with.
I think it's you say it twice. Okay, never mind. I remember. Yeah.
You remember?
You say it.
Yeah, you say it second night as well. Yeah. Okay, good. I mean, I don't remember. In the morning, when you go to shul in the morning, that's when the fun is going to begin, right? Because we got, there's a lot of prayers to say. So there's going to be the regular Yom Tov Shacharit, morning prayers, and then you get the lulav and the esrog, right? So what will happen is you have to make a blessing over your lulav and your esrog. How do you do that? So you take the lulav and the esrog and you hold the lulav is really comprised of three of the species together. So the palm branch in the middle, and then you'll have the hadassim, the myrtles on the right-hand side, and you'll have the willows on the left-hand side. And that's all contained together in like a little sort of pouch that's made out of the leaves of the palm branch. And then there's the etrog, the citron, which is going to be held in your left hand, and you have to bring them all together and make a blessing over them. Now, when you come to make the blessing, there's a little bit of a technical thing over here. The top of the etrog, which goes up right into sort of like a little point at the end, needs to be held downwards, pointing downwards. You need to hold it upside down when you make the blessing. And after you've finished making the blessing, you then turn the etrog the right way around, and then you start waving it in 6 different directions. Now, I'm going to tell you the Ashkenazi order of waving the lulav and the esrog. I am not going to tell you the Hasidic and the Sephardic method because I don't know them. But you wave the lulav and the esrog in a forwards direction. You then in a right, to your right, then behind you, then to the left, and then up and then down. Right? Now, by the Nusach Sfard, which is the Hasidic Nusach, they do it, it's a slightly different order. If anybody here? Is there anybody here? You're here. Okay. No, Benjamin, you want to tell us the order?
So it's
Where are we?
south.
South is down, right?
No, yeah. It's up, down,
Yeah.
and right and left. But you have to do this south, north, east, west.
Only 4, not 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Okay, good, right? I mean, we got 4, there are 4 primary directions, right? But there's also up and down as well. So in the Ashkenazi tradition is do up and down, right, as well. What are we doing? These things are very Kabbalistic. They're called na'anunim, and you're supposed to wave the lulav and the esrog in these different directions, and we're bringing God's majesty down into the world. We're showing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that God rules over the entire world, and it's very beautiful. Everybody's going to be doing that in shul. Right after you've done that, this is when the real fun begins. We have something called hakafot. What are hakafot? Everybody is going to get into. They're going to push all the furniture together and make a pathway so that you can go around in a circle around the bimah, right? Hoshanas. The Sefer Torah will be taken out of the ark. Somebody will hold it next to the bimah, which will be in the middle, and then they'll start reciting tefillahs. They'll start reciting prayers together, and everyone will start going around, right? And depending on how many people there are in the shul, depends on how fast you're going to go. You may find yourself like shuffling around, not going very fast at all because there's too many people and not enough space to do this in. That's okay. Please be careful. If you're going to do this, please be careful of other people's eyes. A lulav is a rather sharp object, and
Been accidents.
one of the reasons why Jews, as a rule, seem to wear glasses more than other people do, I think, is just to keep their eyes safe from the lulavim on Sukkot, right? You didn't even know that, and look at that now.
Now I know why.
When you do Hoshanas, when you're doing the house,
Yeah.
you keep the
What are you trying to say?
esrog on the way up.
Up, yeah. When you make the bracha, you turn it down,
Here, okay.
I always wear that.
right? And then when you finish the bracha, you turn it up and you keep it up.
Always get confused.
It's an interesting thing, right? Because the union of being the kind of mitzvah of Arba Minim, if you bring them together, then you've already fulfilled the mitzvah of Arba Minim before you've made the bracha. Right? So in order, if you turn it upside down, then you haven't done it, right? You haven't fulfilled the mitzvah yet, and then you can turn it the right way around after you've made the bracha, and then you can, right? So and that's what's going to happen. Oh, I see you're practicing.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Good. Okay. You go around once. Right, we'll get to Hoshana Rabbah, but for now, on the first day of Sukkot, on the second day of Sukkot, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, you're going to go around one time, right? And then everybody comes back and they put their lulav and their esrog away, and then the Sefer Torah will be read from every single day. There's going to be Kriyat Torah. It doesn't matter whether it's Yom Tov. On Yom Tov it's going to be longer, but for the rest of Sukkot, every single morning there is reading from the Torah, and then the Sefer Torah is put back into the ark, and there's going to be Musaf every day there's going to be an additional Amidah which is going to be recited, which is a Musaf Amidah, the special one that's recited for Sukkot. And again, you just got to be careful because each day you're going to say something a little bit different because each day has got its own, each day is referenced inside of the Amidah itself.
I try to make the blessings of the Lulav and Esrog before I start davening if there's a sukkah.
Oh, very good. Some people have the minig, some people have the custom that not to make the blessing of the Lulav and the Esrog right after Shachrit, right before Hallel, but rather to recite it in the sukkah before they go to shul. And again, everyone should do according to their own custom. Some shuls have a sukkah in it anyway, so for some people they'll dash out, at the end of the repetition of the Amidah, they'll dash out to the sukkah and make their bracha over there. Wherever you make the blessing over the lulav and the esrog, it's going to be fine. Right? If you do it inside of the sukkah, if that's your custom, that's what you should be doing. And if that's not your custom, that's fine as well. Right? Whatever you do is okay. Yeah.
Did I miss the information about which days are Yom Tovs?
No. I wasn't going to reveal that because I felt that it was far too Kabbalistic. But if you've already brought it up, then I'm now going to reveal to you this information. But once you have heard it, please destroy it.
Mission impossible.
Exactly. Are you ready? Yom Tov is going to begin on Wednesday night. The festival is going to begin on Wednesday night. Thursday and Friday for you people is Yom Tov. Right? For everybody, Thursday is Yom Tov. That's a festival day. For people who are not from here, who are not Israelis, so they're supposed to be keeping 2 days.
So why do Israelis?
Why 1 and why 2? Yeah, so the emphasis is like this. Originally, and this is we're going back now even into temple times, right? Originally, when the Jews were living not just in Israel, but they were living out of Israel as well, there had to be a method of letting them know when Yom Tov was. Right? Because how did they decide when Yom Tov was? It went according to the testimony that was brought to the temple in Jerusalem. Right? And there were Jews that were living over the border in Syria, and they needed to know as well. So they had a system, it was quite a fascinating system actually, of fires that were lit from hilltops, and they only needed 5 in order for the message to get from Jerusalem to Syria, right? They had them on very strategic mountain tops on the way. They would light fires. When the minute he saw the fire, he would light his, and the person after him would light when he saw that, right? And the one after that would light his, and they would know within a few minutes. They would know that the new month has been decreed, and then they would know how to be able to work out when the Yom Tov was supposed to be. The problem was that the system broke down after a while. There was a sect of people who had an agenda, and they would play around with when they would send off these fiery messages on days that would fit in with their belief system, and things were getting messed up. People were not keeping on the right days. So the sages introduced a different system which involved sending out messengers. Now the messengers would go out after the new month had been decreed. The messengers would then start going out in order to bring the message to the outlying communities, and it could take up to 2 weeks for them to get to where they need to get to. The problem is that by the time they got there, it would probably be Yom Tov already, which means that in the communities outside of Israel, they would keep 2 days because of the concern that maybe one of the days wasn't the right day and the other day was the right day, right? The question is today, why are we still doing this? Because we're not relying on any kind of eyewitness testimony in order to be able to make the new months anymore. Hillel II, almost 2,000 years ago, established the calendar that we're still using today. Right, using the calculations of a month, a lunar month is 29 and a half days long, right, which is why we have each month is either 29 days or 30 days. They balance each other out, because you can't have a month which is 29 and a half days and then make a Rosh Chodesh. It doesn't work. So each one is either 29 days or 30 days long. And Hillel sorted out when everything was going to be Hillel II, not the famous Hillel, but his grandson, sorted out the system whereby we know exactly when Yom Tov is going to be, right? So you can look in any calendar. So now we know that on Shabbat it's going to be Yom Kippur, but you can look into the calendar to see when next Yom Kippur is going to be, and in 10 years' time and in 100 years' time as well. And it will tell you, why are we still keeping 2 days? Outside of Israel, why are people still keeping 2 days? So the Rambam says that one of the reasons is because it's like to remind the people living in the diaspora that they're not living in the place they're supposed to be living. It's like a little bit of a trying to think of the right word to use over here, but it's like I guess a little bit of a fine, right? That you should know that you're living in a place where you're not supposed to be living, and therefore you're going to end up keeping the tradition of having to keep 2 days rather than keeping 1 day like they keep over here. Why are you people, if you're here right now, why would you have to keep 2 days and not 1 day? So the answer is because according to the halakha, according to Jewish law, it's going to be defined about, it's not defined about your geographic location right now. It's the definition is going to be where you are, where do you live? Right? Which means that if a person comes to live in Israel, then that's it. They keep 1 day. But if a person is only staying in Israel temporarily, then they would keep 2 days like everybody else in the diaspora. And the same way around. If an Israeli goes to the diaspora, an Israeli goes to America for Sukkot, so he doesn't have to keep 2 days, he keeps 1 day of Yom Tov. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I don't want to go into all the details, but because he lives in Israel, he's keeping 1 day, as opposed to the people from America that are coming to here, that because they live in America, they're going to keep 2 days. Is that clear?
Sir, yes, sir.
Good. The only day that we don't use a lulav and an esrog is on Shabbat. Right, so on Shabbat, do not come to shul with your lulav and esrog. I could just see you guys turning up, like wandering into shul, like all proud and like, what's going on? You'll be the only ones there with your lulav and esrog. Don't do it. Don't come to shul with a lulav and esrog on Shabbat. Why is that? Because the sages introduced a decree that people shouldn't end up carrying in a place where they're not supposed to be carrying. So on Shabbat we don't do it. However, there are still hakafot, which means that the Sefer Torah is going to be brought into the middle, into the bima, and the various tefillot, the various prayers that are recited are going to be recited as well for Shabbat, just without the lulav and the esrog.